Breaking news, the Biden administration taking a series of actions to target what they allege are attempts by Russian-backed actors to manipulate public opinion here in the U.S. ahead of the presidential election.
This story, Russiagate 0.20, covers a variety of complex ideas. We're going to be starting with, well, how can the mainstream media be carrying once again the idea that Russia are interfering in elections? And does that seem plausible to you when Putin has already declared that his personal preference would be a Kamala Harris presidency? And what's happening with the leaked DOJ investigation into independent content creators? And we're going to touch upon Stephen Crowder, Rumble creator's investigation into the DOJ. We're going to have to work out, what is it that this version of Russiagate is about? Okay, guys, let's get into it. First of all, maybe we should start off with let's have a look at the mainstream media reporting on the subject, pushing the idea that it is indeed Russiagate 0.20.
Breaking news, the Biden administration taking a series of actions to target what they allege are attempts by Russian-backed actors to manipulate public opinion here in the U.S. ahead of the presidential election, according to two senior U.S. officials. Joining us now is NBC's Ken Delanian. Ken, what more have we learned?
Jose, this is being described by our sources as a whole-of-government action designed to target Russian propaganda and disinformation aimed at interfering in the 2024 election. It is said to include sanctions by the Treasury Department, law enforcement action by the Justice Department, and one of the focuses is on RT, formerly known as Russia Today, that network of Russian government-funded English-language websites and television platforms that was flagged all the way back in 2017 by the U.S. intelligence community as a vehicle for Russian disinformation and election interference. And at that time, the Justice Department required RT to register as a foreign agent. It remains to be seen exactly what actions the U.S. will take against RT today, but this does appear to represent an escalation in the efforts to try to purge the system of Russian propaganda and disinformation. What's interesting is that, look, the U.S. has been saying all along that not only Russia, but Iran and China, but particularly Russia, has been consistently trying to manipulate American public opinion with disinformation on social media platforms, use of fake accounts, and through RT, through its state-sponsored platforms, as they did in 2016. The difference now is that there are mechanisms in place, particularly on the social media platforms, to try to stop and flag fake accounts before the influence operations spread too widely. So it remains to be seen what impact this Russian disinformation is having. But nonetheless, this is a stance by the Biden administration to say, if you're violating U.S. laws and policies, we're going to come after you. And Attorney General Merrick Garland is expected to chair a meeting of the government's election task force today, this afternoon, with FBI Director Chris Wray and other officials, and he may have public comments to make about this effort at that time, Jose.
Like the first time they did that, Russiagate, it seemed like an inability to address the lack of their government's actual popularity, a disinterest, or in fact uninterested electorate turning away from the kind of mainstream politics that had consistently failed to deliver the type of results that the electorate feel that they deserve. And in fact, you could argue that they do deserve. This version of it, don't you think that this is sort of an attempt to create absolute bewilderment? Don't you think that what we're living in now is a time of such sort of delirium that, like, do you think that Russian misinformation could genuinely impact the outcome of the 2024 election? Because there is so much bloody information to consume. Let me firstly get into this. Morning Joe certainly aren't happy with the idea that we could potentially be dealing with Putin supporting Kamala Harris, that they consider it to be trolling.
It's been long since I've called any leaders of Europe or the US, but we're not against any type of contacts. We're not limiting them. Yes, sometimes we exchange some kind of information using different channels. First of all, through the foreign ministry. It's not for us to determine. These are elections of the US people. I said that if we can name a favorite candidate, it used to be Joe Biden, but now he is not participating in the election campaign, and he recommended all his allies to support Ms. Harris. So that is what we are going to do.
Yeah, that is some Olympic level trolling.
Would they do that though? Would they troll their own population on Russian media? So they would he would assume that would get picked up in the US and would play well. I don't understand how many levels to this game there are. Let's have a look at other legacy media outlets dealing with the inconvenient news that Putin would prefer Kamala. And if they would prefer Kamala Harris, why would they be trying to manipulate and influence the election in favor of Trump? Well, at what point how many levels to this simulacrum is there?
President Putin said this morning that President Biden was his first choice for a second term, but that now he'd like Vice President Harris to become the next American president. Her laugh is so expressive and infectious, Putin said at an economic conference. But is the former spy telling the truth? U.S. intelligence agencies believe Putin prefers Donald Trump over Harris, seeing him as less likely to continue supporting Ukraine. And Washington believes Putin is already trying to influence the election. On Wednesday, the State Department said it would designate 5 Russian state-funded news organizations, including RT, formerly known as Russia Today, Ruptly, and Sputnik, as foreign government missions and limit visas for their employees. The Justice and Treasury Departments are acting as well, indicting 2 RT employees accused of funding an American right-wing media company to carry out the Kremlin's influence campaign.
The Justice Department's message is clear. We have no tolerance for attempts by authoritarian regimes to exploit our democratic system of government.
A spokesman for RT told NBC News the group had several responses, including ha 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 and 2016 called and wants its cliches back.
Asked who could potentially mediate a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, President Putin said he is open to negotiations and that China, Brazil, or India could serve as a mediator. Hoda.
All right, Richard Engel for us there in Ukraine. Richard, thank you.
It's getting deep, guys. We can't continue to bring you this beautiful content without the support of our partners. America, listen up. First, a massive COVID-19 spike with 1.29 million cases reported daily. Then the World Health Organization declares monkeypox a global health emergency. What will they do next? Well, apparently it's going to be a bird flu summit. These aren't just coincidences. It seems that they're calculated moves to keep us fearful and controlled. Would you agree? Were you prepared for the last pandemic? 48% of Americans don't have any emergency supplies ready. We saw how the medical and pharmaceutical industries failed us last time. Are we going to count on them again this time? It's time to take control. Get the Contagion Emergency Kit from the Wellness Company. It's packed with ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pak, Tamiflu, and budesonide, and a nebulizer. The treatments they apparently didn't want you to have. A few clicks, and this kit will be at your door. Act now, protect your family, be proactive, and be prepared. Order your Contagion Emergency Kit today. Visit twc.health/brand. Use the promo code BRAND at checkout to save $30. That's twc.health/brand and use the code BRAND to claim your discount. These kits are limited and only available in the United States of America. God bless America. The legacy media, of course, are claiming that numerous independent media content creators have accepted money from a Russian carve-out, the same way I suppose that CIA carve-outs often generate media in Ukraine. I know this because it's sort of happened to me. They're claiming that Benny Johnson and Tim Pool and Dave Rubin and others have accepted money from a Russian carve-out. Now, I know that all of them deny that. And let's have a look at the legacy media's reporting on it. In this image, that you can't. Now, that is Dave Rubin and that is dear Benny Johnson. But that fella in the middle, that's just a guy with a hat on. Do your research, Guardian. You can't get away with that. Tim Pool would not wear an oatmeal coloured hat, would he? That's offensive misgendering of Tim Pool taking place there at The Guardian. Okay, let's have a look at Megyn Kelly explaining this extraordinary story.
So here's the deal. The DOJ is alleging that these two Russians who worked for RT, I mean, that does matter, but it's really the fact that they're in Russia and they're Russian and they're pushing Russian interests. What they did was they called their friend Lauren Chen. Now, she is a Canadian citizen who's living and working in America, I believe living here too, but definitely working in America for, among others, The Blaze. And she's a relatively well-known conservative personality online. I will say she's a troll. I unfollowed her a while ago because it was obvious this is not a person worth listening to on X. So they contacted Lauren Chen because, unbeknownst to me, she had worked for RT for a year as a commentator, apparently on the air, but at least writing articles for them. So openly affiliating with this channel. Now, it's not that RT, it's definitely state-run media. It is with Russia. I mean, good luck finding them doing anything critical of Vladimir Putin. Trust me. They try to get more and more influence in the United States. They've had people reach out to me many times to try to get me to do something. It's a no. Okay, they know that by this point. But in this case, they did reach out to Lauren, according to this indictment, and said, help us form a new independent media company and help us find influencers who will work for it. And according to the indictment, she did. She and her husband both did that and recruited guys like Dave and Tim Pool and Benny and three others I never heard of. And she, according to the indictment, knew that the Russians would be funding this and editing content, but the influencers, the conservative podcasters, did not. And that's according to the indictment. That's why none of them has been indicted. The feds are saying Rubin, Pool, Benny, they didn't know. They were not told. In fact, they were given misinformation by Lauren because they allege she knew they would never do this if they understood it was being funded by the Russians. She told them that it was all being funded by some French businessman, Edouard Grigorian. And the indictment alleges that both Tim and Dave, I don't know about the others, tried to kick the tires a bit, obviously not enough, on who this is. Who's Edouard Grigorian? And they wanted to see like a profile of the guy. All that was forwarded was a LinkedIn, which appears obviously to have been fake. And then Dave Rubin is, according to the indictment, the guy who pushed more and said, like, this isn't enough. And then they created this whole fake profile of this guy, Edouard Grigorian, that's like pretty fancy. I'm holding it up for the listening audience, and you can see, frankly, it looks a little obviously stock picture at the top of some vaguely attractive man looking out a window of a private jet. And then it's got all sorts of fawning descriptions about the guy. And Dave apparently did push back even after that, saying, I'm not sure about this guy. It says he's into social justice. Why is he looking for me? Anyway, there was some pushback. But here's the bottom line. They were offering eye-popping sums to these influencers, and they took the deal.
Edward Gregorian, mystery man, looking out the window of a private jet. He cares about social justice and he cares about you and me. Let me tell you, they didn't offer us any money. You'd have just watched 25 minutes of me telling you that Edward Gregorian's a great fella and we should just follow along with it. Don't you just assume that all media is to some degree propaganda, and that isn't in fact the charm of independent media is that the biases are sort of somewhat evident and explicitly declared. I mean, on this show, I don't know what we would be capable of propagating. The whole thing's run on pure instinct, intuition, goodwill, faithfulness. So when you look at that, the story then, Russiagate is being rebooted. Now, I keep putting the decimal point in the wrong place, don't I? It's Russiagate 0.20. That's what it is, not 2.0. You're quite right about that. But we can't simply continue to believe that the only reason people would vote for Donald Trump or vote against Kamala Harris and the remnants of the establishment that she represents because of Putin's ingenuity and deception is plain that people are utterly disillusioned and on the precipice of despair with the institutions of democracy, the institutions of justice, the institutions of communication, primarily because they've all become so dreadfully corrupted. You can't have it that on one hand Putin is publicly endorsing Kamala Harris, then deceptively ensuring that people vote for Trump. I don't know how he thinks that he would benefit from a Kamala Harris presidency or a Trump presidency. It's pretty clear that the Democratic Party are more interested in continuing to fund Ukraine, for example. That would seem pretty likely. I can't pretend to begin to understand it, not for a second, except for saying that the world of media, espionage, surveillance and censorship seems to be governed increasingly by authoritarian forces that benefit from all of us being goggle-eyed and bedazzled and distracted from the things that are truly important, and you know what they are, don't you? Personally, I know most of those influencers, and I would say that none of them are going to actively promote Russian interests for money. It's not how it works. Like Dave Rubin, double patriotic. Benny Johnson is patriotic to an outrageous degree. Tim Pool seems like a deeply critical thinker, trying his best. If America votes for Donald Trump in November 2024, it's not going to be because of the will of Vladimir Putin. It's going to be because of the ineptitude and corruption of the government for the last 4 years and the general state of disillusionment, the fugue of despair induced by centrist politics that condemns ordinary Americans rather than representing them continually. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.